It's time. Time to rank the best running backs in the NFL today. Welcome, football fans, to another BLV NFL rankings video. In this video, I rank the top 32 running backs in the NFL entering 2025. This is my opinion on the best real life, not fantasy football, running backs entering 2025 based on their talent and their production. If that sounds good, spike the like button for more NFL rankings at every position. If you like the video, it lets me know that you want to see more wide receiver rankings, offensive line rankings, every position. I got it covered. And that's why you should subscribe to the BLV for more off-season rankings just like this. And let me know in the comments, because this list was really difficult. I'm talking extremely grueling. I am still deciding on some of these spots. Eventually, you just have to make a decision. So let me know in the comments what I got right and what I got wrong. These are my top 32 running backs. Now, when it comes to the guys that I left off the list, there was a good portion of players that I wanted to include that I simply couldn't. There's only 32 names on this list. So there's a few running backs that I would like to mention first. That is Tank Bigsby of the Jacksonville Jags is my number 33. I nearly had him on the list, if not for a last-second switch. Extremely explosive. And last season, you could argue, and I think Jags fans would argue, he was better than ETN. So, number 33, Tank Bigsby. I also would like to say Zach Charbonnet is a really good player of Seattle. Well-rounded, good power, good in the passing game, really good complement to Kenneth Walker. I also really like Tyler Algier, who has an 1,000-yard season on his resume and might be the best pure backup, best pure handcuff in fantasy terms in the entire NFL. Those were three guys that were closest to making this list. Let's get to number 32, which is Isaiah Pacheco of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, purely based on performance last season, I would not include Isaiah Pacheco. I would actually even say that Kareem Hunt was a better player than Isaiah Pacheco in my eyes. And a lot of this list is based on my eyeballs, okay? But Isaiah Pacheco was not great. Like, statistically speaking, yards after contact per attempt, 50th out of 50 running backs. Like, overall, not an effective player. But we've seen Pacheco in previous campaigns be extremely explosive and a difference maker in the backfield for the Chiefs. He's been a weapon in the passing game, and more importantly, I think just an explosive runner that creates big plays. And I think without him healthy, they really missed him last year. They missed him on their run to the Super Bowl. They missed that running back that was capable of taking a 7-yard carry and making it a 25, 30, 40-yard carry. Like with Kareem Hunt, yes, he was getting positive gains. He was getting the short yardage. But Pacheco brings that speed that is simply unmatched for the Chiefs. So hopefully we see that again when he's healthy. And I'm willing to cut him a break because he wasn't healthy for pretty much the entire season. So I thought he was kind of still developing, still informing his game, still becoming more well-rounded as a pass catcher, as a route runner, as a pass blocker. But the one thing I love about him is his style of running is extremely fun and entertaining. His just overall rushing style. And then also, I like his aggression. I like the way he keeps his legs moving. And I love that explosiveness. So that's why I still have him at number 32. At number 31, Brian Robinson Jr. is my choice for number 31. I'm not a huge Brian Robinson guy, but I do see his value, okay? He's a bigger back that's actually kind of slimmer, at least the way that I see him on the field. And it's a rare kind of weird combination. He is more of a pure runner rather than a receiver, where he is not utilized as a third down back or really a huge receiving option. He'll catch the odd dump off or the odd screen pass, but that is mostly Austin Eckler's role within Washington's run game. I will say that overall throughout his career, he's been pretty solid and consistent. He's had about 700 rushing yards in 3 consecutive campaigns. And last year, it was probably his most dynamic because he was able to complement Jaden Daniels. And that took Brian Robinson to the next level. He's also been very solid in terms of his yards after contact every season of his career. He consistently finds ways to bounce off of opponents, bounce off of defenders, and continue to get yards. Now, he's not the most explosive or straightaway fast, but I do think he combines a nice little ability to get skinny at his size with that ability to also break tackles and create more yards. He's also really solid in the red zone, in my opinion, and I just see him as a very overall solid first, second down ball carrier in an offense. I don't think he's truly special, but he is a starting caliber running back. So at number 31, Brian Robinson. At number 30, I have Jaylen Warren of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, Jaylen Warren is really difficult to rank because he's never been given the workload that these other running backs have been given. In 2025, he might finally see that workload, which is what I'm excited about because I've always been a fan of his game. He is undersized at about only 5'8", but he does have a good size in his lower half, which makes him a good combination of quick with nasty cuts, but then also enough power and balance to be able to break tackles. And there have been seasons in his past where Warren has been maybe the most elusive, difficult to bring down for the limited amount of touches, and really efficient with his workload. So I'm excited to see what he does with more work. He's also a pretty good receiver. This past season, he had 38 receptions. He's very effective in the screen game because he can turn, catch, make a quick cut, and then all of a sudden he's in the open field where his level of balance, quickness, and speed can be showcased. But overall, we just have not seen enough from him as an overall ball carrier, as an overall carry the load type of guy, for me to rank him too much higher. He only had 821 yards overall, yards from scrimmage last year, but a 5.2 yards per touch is really impressive. And then again, top 20 in yards after contact, which is really, really good. So Jaylen Warren, I'm a fan of his game. I look forward to seeing if he truly does become their starter or if now he's just the complement to Caleb Johnson. That's going to be the question now that Najee's gone. So at number 30, Jaylen Warren. At number 29, I have J.K. Dobbins, now of the Denver Broncos, last season of the Chargers, with a comeback player of the year type of effort last season. He had over 1,000 yards from scrimmage with the Chargers, and I didn't feel like he got the market that I thought he deserved after last season. Maybe my thoughts on Dobbins and the NFL's thoughts on Dobbins, considering his injury history, are just totally different. Because I thought that Dobbins was going to be re-signed by the Chargers. I thought he was effective enough. I thought he was good enough, explosive enough to be given another look there. I also just felt that more teams would be interested in him because he's not that old, although he has had some serious injuries. There's no denying that, and that's probably what it is. He's not the most well-rounded running back in football. He had 32 receptions last year, which I believe was a career high, so he doesn't really catch the ball too often. But still, he had 69, nearly 70 rushing yards per game. He had 9 total touchdowns. He consistently has a good yards per carry, whether it be with Baltimore, where he was averaging about 6 yards a carry, or with the Chargers, about 4 yards, 4.5 yards per carry, 4.6 to be exact last season. And he actually was 25th in yards after contact per attempt, which is pretty good at over 3 yards after contact. He forced the 22nd most missed tackles. So this is a guy that still has that dimension of a bowling ball, where he's got the speed and he's got that bounce off opponent type of run style, right? He's very one cut and go. And with that one cut, he can be pretty dynamic. I don't know if he still has that top gear that we saw from him as a rookie, but I still think he's got enough juice and explosiveness to be like a borderline RB1 in this league. It's just that he probably needs a complement because of the injury history, because of the lack of passing game proficiency. But overall, I thought he was very good in his comeback effort in 2024. So number 29, J.K. Dobbins. At number 28, another breakout running back from 2024 that won't be a starter in 2025. That's Rico Dowdle, now of the Carolina Panthers. If Rico Dowdle was a starter, let's say once again in Dallas, I honestly probably would have him a couple spots higher because I don't think people realize how good Dowdle was late last season. He had numerous 100-yard games at the end of last season, and he was carrying the Dallas offense without Dak Prescott. But because he's now a backup, I just don't see how I can project him to be like a top 25 running back in 2025. So I'm sort of playing the projection and production game here with Rico Dowdle, but 1,300 total yards last year, top 15 in yards after contact per attempt. He was 16th in missed tackles forced, and he had 39 catches and 4.6 yards per attempt. Rico Dowdle was pretty good for the Dallas Cowboys last year, and he proved me right because I loved him as a late sleeper in fantasy last year. It took him a little bit to get going, but overall, he showcased a well-rounded game. The ability to be slippery in open space as a pass catcher and as a screen playmaker, and then also as a runner, the good level of, I think, quickness on top of vision, on top of just consistency. He just provided somebody consistent for the Dallas Cowboys, which is all they were truly looking for, right? Post Tony Pollard. And I thought they gave really the Cowboys enough. I thought Rico was good enough to get an extension, but I guess not. I don't know. Rico Dowdle's now a Carolina Panther. He'll be backing up Chuba Hubbard, but I do think that makes one of the best combinations in football, and I do think Dowdle does provide the pass-catching value that maybe Hubbard doesn't. So Dowdle's a sneaky one. I thought he was a lot better last year than given credit for. I have him at number 28. At number 27, Rachaad White of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Rachaad White is one of the best backups in football. I would truly consider him a backup right now, and I would also say that he provides a value where he is a consistent pass-catching force. He's had 50 receptions in all 3 of his NFL seasons, which is very good for an NFL running back. 51 last season. He went over 1,000 total yards as more of a compliment to Bucky Irving at the end of the day. He was the starter at the beginning of the year, technically, but it did not take long for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to recognize that Bucky Irving was simply different, more explosive, and that's always what's held back Rachaad White, is that he's not the most explosive ball carrier, and honestly, he's not the best ball carrier, but he is a very good pass game back. He's very smart. First of all, he runs really good routes. And I do think he could pass block well. He's good in the screen game. I just think his intelligence and his vision, it shines in all levels of his game. I think he's just a very solid player, whether you hand it to him. And then he has that good level of balance, I feel like, power in certain regard as well. He doesn't have that straightaway speed, right? And he doesn't have that dynamic quickness. Although he can make some quick cuts in a phone booth, it's not like he's absolutely slicing up the turf. But I do believe that he has a good combination of size, power, balance, and then the receiving skills to kind of make him a well-rounded player overall and a very valuable player. I think he certainly could be a starter. It's just that you're lacking that explosiveness if he is your starter. But he was top 20 in yards after contact per attempt. He also, had a pretty good season again as a receiver. So I think Rachaad White, good player, definitely a great compliment for Bucky, and I think a more valuable player in real life because he's going to provide that third down value, that pass catching value that I don't think really enough people value enough. I think that's a huge skill for a running back. At number 26, I have Tyrone Tracy Jr., which purely based on last year, I would say that he's probably not 26, but I'm somewhat projecting a little bit here, and I do believe that Tracy could have a breakout season with the Giants this year. So he could be a top 20 running back next year. I wouldn't be that surprised, right? If this was a fantasy list, I might be a little bit higher. I'm not sure. But Tyrone Tracy had ultimately 1,100 plus yards. That's pretty impressive for a guy that wasn't the starter the entire season and was kind of a late round breakout running back in the draft. He averaged 4.4 yards per attempt behind a bad offensive line. He had 38 receptions, obviously transferring from his wide receiver background in college. And ultimately, this is a player that has only played running back for 2 years in his life. Never mind in the NFL. 2 years in his life, okay? So he's going to get better. His vision's going to get better. His cuts are going to get better. His understanding of blocking schemes, it's going to get better, right? And then you combine that with just the physical makeup of the player where he has good speed, he has good quickness, he's got the easy hands, the effortless receiving ability, obviously from his receiver days, and he could be even utilized more in that aspect, in my opinion. And he's a breakaway runner. Like, he was one of the best breakaway runners we saw last season. And he gave a little bit of that Saquon shine to the Giants offense. So I thought immediately, as soon as they made him their guy, it really did take a different level to the Giants offense, despite him kind of struggling near the end of the year because of the bad quarterback play, the bad offensive line play, the tough opponents that he did face. He did have some really good outings I can remember against the Steelers, the Seahawks, some really good games. I'm a big fan of him. I like his well-rounded skill set, and he truly could be utilized as a weapon breakout for the Giants in 2025. So at number 26, I have Tyrone Tracy Jr. At number 25, DeAndre Swift of the Chicago Bears. I'm not the biggest DeAndre Swift fan, but I do have to give him credit for the last 2 seasons and his overall production. First of all, he did have 295 touches after a pretty strong touch season with the Eagles the year previous. So Swift was, pretty good as a rusher with the Eagles overall. And then this past year, I thought he did showcase his dynamic ability once again as a receiver. That wasn't a huge element of his game with the Eagles because of Jalen Hurts and his lack of dependence on the running back position to actually throw the ball. Like, Saquon doesn't even really become a huge threat in the offense as a receiver because Hurts doesn't really throw the ball to the running back. That's not really a part of their offense. But Swift, once again in Chicago, I think that was the shining aspect of his game. I thought, especially as a screen guy, he is one of the best in the NFL. I think his vision, his ability to just hit one cut and go, and I think he has really good athleticism. It's not necessarily that he has really good speed. I think his speed is pretty good, maybe slightly above average, right? But he's got very good athleticism, very good bendability, very good overall quickness, jukes, his overall ability to just move and be slippery, and it's kind of tough to describe, but he's very athletic as a runner, and you'll see him hurdle players, stuff like that. So he was, I would say, in a tough spot with the Bears because their offensive line was pretty bad. He was dealing with a rookie quarterback, and he didn't always have the most daylight, and he's kind of a guy where he's not the most efficient runner in the world. He's kind of a home run hitter as a pure runner, which is where I kind of knock him on the list. At the same time, though, I think he is a bit of a home run guy, which means he's going to hit some explosives. There are moments and there are highlights where it's like, wow, this guy's really good. But then there's other times where it's like, that was not the best idea. He doesn't showcase the most consistent vision in the world. Maybe he would be better if he was more of a complimentary back and more of just purely a pass back, because he is very good in that regard. He's pretty good as a route runner, pretty good out of the backfield, really good as a screen player, as I've mentioned. So there's things I like about him. There's things I don't like about him. It's tough. Only 3.8 yards per attempt last year. That's pretty poor as a pure runner, but I still have enough respect for his game to put him at number 25 as a guy that did carry the load for his offense 2 years consecutively, which does matter to me. So at number 25, DeAndre Swift. At number 24, I have Travis Etienne of the Jacksonville Jags. Etienne is coming off the worst season of his career. I believe he's only 3. This will be his 4th year, if I'm not mistaken, in the NFL, which is kind of crazy. I feel like he's been in the league for a long time. I don't know if it's just me, but Travis Etienne, there's been moments where I really liked him coming out of college. I've really liked him in moments in the NFL. I feel like he's been a top 15, borderline top 10 running back in certain seasons. But last year, it just was not it. You know, his yards per attempt was 3.7. His yards per touch was 4.3. His yards after contact per attempt was 46th in the NFL. It's just not the same player. You know, not the same power, not the same balance, not the same slipperiness. Still showcasing an ability to catch the ball with 39 receptions. But honestly, Jacksonville really struggled to run the ball. Their offensive line was really bad. And now Liam Cohen is going to have to go in there and fix it similarly to how he did with Tampa. And I could see him bouncing back here, Travis Etienne, because we have seen 1,000-yard seasons from him. We have seen that balance in his game from a receiving and rushing perspective. And we've seen the quick cutting ability. We have seen the juice in the lower half where this guy's got that awkward build where he can bounce off of you and he can juke you as well. So Etienne has the talent. Etienne has the pedigree. Etienne has everything to be a top 15 running back again. It comes down to the confidence. It comes down to the consistency. It comes down to his belief in the system, in the offensive line. I just felt like things weren't there for him last year. So let's see if he can have a bounce back year. But I have him at number 24 because of the lack of consistency and production in 2024. At number 23, Ramondre Stevenson. I think this is the lowest I've ever ranked Ramondre Stevenson on one of my lists. I felt like last year, there were games where he was awesome. There were games where he was dominant. I mean, the week 1 performance against Cincinnati was one of the best pure carry the team running back performances I saw for the entire year. But it felt like we were chasing that performance as Patriots Nation, as a Patriots fan, all season long. And Stevenson was inconsistent in terms of his ability to protect the ball. He fumbled the ball far too much. He did have some drops. It felt like just overall inconsistencies. I will say that at his best, Stevenson is a really good running back in terms of the ability to hit explosives, but then also have the power and the balance to get short yardage. He's got a really nice blend of a skill set where he's a capable pass catcher, he's a capable route runner, he's capable of explosives, he's capable in short yardage. He's a well-rounded blend of a player. It's just that last year, they had a terrible offensive line. They had a terrible receiving core. Every team was kind of like honed in on stopping Ramondre Stevenson in the run game, especially early in the season with Jacoby Brissett. And I think that really hurt Stevenson, and he really wore down last year, it felt like. And then Antonio Gibson kind of became the Patriots' best runner, the best running back, because Stevenson, it just felt like he wore out at a certain point. But 22nd in yards after contact last year, okay? 16th in missed tackles forced, okay? He still had 8 touchdowns, 969 total yards, and 33 catches. He's still, like I said, a guy that you would want as your first and second down player because he can do everything pretty well. It's just that he's not dynamic like some of these top upper echelon guys, and he's not truly explosive like some of these change of pace guys. He's kind of somewhere in the middle. At the same time, he's very capable of being a top 15 running back when he is at his best. So at number 23, Ramondre Stevenson. Could be in for a bounce back this year under Josh McDaniels. At number 22, David Montgomery of the Detroit Lions. Montgomery, on the other hand, has just been consistent inside a good offense for the Detroit Lions, and one of the best pure power bowling ball backs in the NFL. You need a yard, you need a touchdown. David Montgomery is going to give you a touchdown. He had 12 touchdowns last season. He's also, I think, a sneaky productive and actually efficient receiver when he's called upon. He had 36 catches last year, which was sort of surprising. And it was almost like defenses were caught off guard whenever he would catch the ball because that's usually Jahmyr Gibbs' thing. I believe he actually led all running backs in yards per route run, which I think speaks to the scheme, but also speaks to like his ability to actually make plays when he was given the chance to do that. At the same time, he consistently forces missed tackles. He's really hard to bring down. The thing with David Montgomery is he just does not have that juice to actually make that forced missed tackle into a big play, right? He'll force a missed tackle, but then he won't create 20 yards after it. It's more like 5, 10 yards. Sometimes the guy misses the tackle, gets back up, and tackles him because he's busy juking another guy, juking this guy, trying to overpower this guy because he just does not have that breakaway dimension to his game. But Montgomery is really good at those quick cuts, really good at maintaining balance, really good at shrugging off defenders, and a really solid complement for Jahmyr Gibbs. I really like his game. I just feel like he's better off as that power complement. And honestly, sometimes it frustrates me how much he gets the ball. I feel like Gibbs should get the ball more. But at number 22, David Montgomery. At number 21, I have Najee Harris, who I see in a very similar way to David Montgomery. And I think the Chargers see him in a very similar way as well, because now he's with the Chargers and they also drafted Hampton, who is kind of their Jahmyr Gibbs. Probably not quite the same type of player or explosive, but I like the idea of Harris more so serving as the David Montgomery of an offense, where Harris is no longer going to be a true workhorse bell cow player getting 300 touches a season, but he's very well-rounded. He does everything well. He pass blocks, he catches the ball, he gets short yardage, and, he can carry the ball 20 times a game. It's just the fact that he's not very explosive or efficient with a lot of his carries because he doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have the juice. He's a lot like David Montgomery, where he'll break a tackle, and he's consistently up at the top of the league in terms of forcing missed tackles. He was the 5th highest in that category last year. Like, he'll shrug off a defender. He'll even juke a guy. He'll hurdle a guy. Like, Najee Harris has athleticism. It's just that he does not have juice. So that's frustrating to watch for a Steelers fan. He'll catch a swing pass, he'll break 2 tackles, and he'll get you 3 yards because ultimately he can't really make that explosive play. But 61.4 yards per game rushing last year, another 1,300 scrimmage yards, over 1,000 yards every single year of his career on the ground, which is a feat that's hard to accomplish in this NFL with how often running backs get injured. His best attribute might be his availability. It's hard to come by in the NFL at this position. 36 catches last year, 15th in first downs. Like, this guy can play, okay? He could play. He could do it all. I like his size in terms of his pass blocking. I like his hands. I like his ability to quick cut and his ability to get that short yardage. I just don't think he's one of those guys that you want because he's not super speed. He's not super fast. So at number 21, Najee Harris, David Montgomery, similar type of player. I think Najee is more well-rounded and has proven to be more of a bell cow, and that's why I have him a spot higher. At number 20, Tony Pollard of the Tennessee Titans. Now, this is a weird one because Tony Pollard statistically was a lot better than I actually assumed last season. I had him in some fantasy leagues, so I'm not sure why I'm so surprised, but Tony Pollard is kind of the opposite of Najee, where he began his career as a highly effective and efficient ball carrier, where he was an explosive change of pace player, like arguably one of the best pure down to down whenever he received a snap, one of the most explosive playmakers in football early in his career, complimenting Zeke Elliott to the point where like Cowboys fans did not want to see Zeke on the field anymore. And then ultimately he got his opportunity with Dallas, but it was after he got injured to where he lost a lot of his explosiveness. He lost a lot of his juice. He lost a lot of that speed and explosiveness and electricity that Cowboys fans were just thirsty over, right? But now he's in Tennessee, and you kind of saw him moments where he was that same old explosive self, moments where he was worn down by too much work. And it feels like there's got to be some sort of middle ground where he can still be more explosive, but also still carry the load. Like, I honestly feel like Pollard's a little too small to be getting 300 touches a season. Like, he had 301 touches last year. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't calculate when I'm watching it. I also felt like he dropped a lot of passes last year, weirdly enough. And I feel like he's a good back, but he's not, like, special. He's not the same explosive guy that he used to be. But when you look at the stats, like, some of them will tell you he was top notch, like yards after contact per attempt, 9th in the NFL. That's a top 10 running back at 3.4. And this is a guy with volume. Like I said, 301 touches, right? He was also 22nd in missed tackles forced. He was top 10 in 10-plus yard runs, 14th in first downs. So he was a top 15 running back in a lot of stats, but only 4.2 yards per attempt. It just felt like he's good, but he's not great. That's kind of how I feel about Tony Pollard. He's good, but he's not great. And I almost feel like he would be better off if there were another guy in the backfield that could take the workload off of him. And perhaps Spears can be that guy in 2025. And ultimately, they could just be better together with more of a split workload. Because I don't think he's at his best when he's getting this amount of work. But at number 20, I have Tony Pollard. I really like the player. I really think he's well-rounded, good enough. I just don't think he's great or excellent. At number 19, Aaron Jones of the Minnesota Vikings. Now, Aaron Jones is the one that hurts me the most because I want to rank Aaron Jones inside my top 15. I truthfully do. I think there were moments last year where Aaron Jones was absolutely a top 15 running back in the NFL. At the same time, though, he clearly did wear down at the end of last season from a production standpoint. I don't know if it was just the offensive line injuries or it was just the opponents or exactly what it was, but it felt like it was evident that Aaron Jones was slowing down. So that scared me, especially coming off a 300 touch season like we just talked about with Tony Pollard. He's 30 years old now, and I'm sort of projecting a little bit of a down season or like a little bit of a decline, I should say, for Aaron Jones. Despite having 1,500 yards from scrimmage last year, 51 catches, he's still one of the best receivers at this position. And at times last year, he was still one of the most explosive and efficient ball carriers at 4.5 yards per attempt, 5.1 yards per touch. He was top 12 in missed tackles forced. He was 13th in yards after contact, only 28th in yards after contact per attempt, though. I will say that Aaron Jones is still good, still really good, and I think the biggest value I like from him is if he is more of that change of pace, you're going to get more of that juice, and you're going to be able to use him more as a receiver, where he's really efficient even down the field at running routes. He's got very good hands, very, very good ability as a receiver, I think. So it just hurts because I feel like they brought in Jordan Mason for a reason. You know, Jordan Mason's going to be taking some carries. Jordan Mason, who was an honorable mention for this list, a guy that had a pretty good breakout season for the 49ers early last year, is more the power back, more of that first and second down grinder ball carrier. It kind of signals to me that Aaron Jones is no longer going to be that lead back for the Vikings in terms of like getting 250 to 300 touches. I could be wrong, okay? But I think it signals to me that the Vikings view Aaron Jones the same way I did late last season, where it's like he's taking a slight step backward. So that's where I kind of anticipate a decline. So I have him at number 19, despite feeling like last year he was a top 15 running back in the NFL, if that makes sense. So at number 19, I have Aaron Jones. At number 18, Chase Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals. Chase Brown is like a younger Aaron Jones, in my opinion. Very efficient, explosive, electric, capable receiver with 54 catches as basically a rookie. Not quite, but I mean, it felt like he kind of was because he barely played in his first NFL season. But he was one of the guys I anticipated to break out in fantasy last year. I was absolutely 100% right about Chase Brown. I was very high on him coming out of the draft. And Chase Brown is a Canadian kid. I'll throw that out there. But also, Chase Brown, I just love his style. I'm really biased towards smaller, explosive running backs that also have the quick cutting ability and the balance and power. And I feel like Chase Brown, he does worry me with his size at times. He does worry me that he'll wear down kind of like Aaron Jones and he will get injured. Like that does worry me a little bit. So that's why I only really have him at 18, plus the fact that he's not as proven or consistently productive as some of the guys above him. Like I still need to see a little bit more because it felt like we only really saw Chase Brown for like 10 to 12 games last year where he was truly the guy. Maybe I'm a little bit off on that, but Chase Brown, I'm excited for in 2025. I wouldn't be shocked if he was one of the 10 best running backs in terms of production next year because it does feel like he's going to be the bell cow or the lead back for one of the most explosive offenses in football. This is not a fantasy list, though. This is a purely based on talent and production. And last year, he was kind of middling in the production, 1350 in terms of yards from scrimmage, 61.9 rushing yards per game, 54 catches, very good season, 283 touches. He was top 12 in missed tackles forced, top 20 in yards per contact yards after contact per attempt. I just feel like I need to see more from him. I need to continue to see this from him. And that's kind of what's missing compared to the guys that are above him, honestly. But I love his juice. I love his explosiveness. I love even his receiving element that he adds to the Bengals offense that I feel like they've been missing a little bit. So at number 18, Chase Brown. At number 17, Chuba Hubbard of the Carolina Panthers. Now, Chuba Hubbard has 2 good quality seasons under his belt compared to somebody like Chase Brown. I think Chase Brown is a better receiver than Hubbard, but Hubbard is a better runner. I would argue that Hubbard might be a top 10 pure rusher in the NFL. It's just that he really lacks in the receiving game. He had 43 catches, but I think for less than 200 yards. So I think he only averaged like 4 yards per catch, which is like really poor. And he needs to work on that area of his game. But as a runner, 79.7 rushing yards per game, 11 touchdowns total, and 293 touches. You combine that with 8th in yards after contact per attempt, top 10 in that category at bouncing off tacklers and making people miss, 11th in missed tackles forced, 4.7 yards per touch, 10th in first downs on the ground, 14th in 10-plus yard rushes. Chuba Hubbard is explosive. That's what I like about him. He can go. He's got real speed. He's probably one of the 10 fastest running backs, if not even higher on that list in the NFL. And I think he gets, like when he has space, he gets yards quickly, right? And then also, I thought he showed more confidence and composure at running back this year, just like more of that arrogance in terms of, I'm going to make you miss. Like, I'm going to go by you. Like, I'm going to shrug you off. Like, he just had plays that took it to the next level this year compared to last year, where in 2023, it felt like he was getting the yards that were there and he was pretty good overall and he showcased that speed. But this year, it felt like he was actually making plays on his own. He would get the yards that were there, but then he would also like create more with his individual effort. You know what I'm saying? And those are truly the difference makers in terms of runners in the NFL. But yeah, if he could become more well-rounded, I'd probably move him up the list. Overall, though, another Canadian back who I have at number 17. Very excited for Canada on this list. Let's get to the next one. At number 16, we have Kyren Williams of the Los Angeles Rams, who will be probably looked at as too low on this list by a majority of skeptics, by a majority of people in the chat. And I'm not hating on the Rams. I'm not hating on Kyren necessarily. It's just that I think he's overrated. I think that he is production over talent. And it was really hard for me to justify his talent being top 15 in the NFL. So this was a really hard one for me because I have drafted Kyren in fantasy. I was all about Kyren in fantasy last year. Like, he helped me win some leagues or rank very highly in some leagues. So, like, he was my guy. I think he was like my most drafted player in fantasy last year. Like, guys, I loved this guy in fantasy. But that's different than actually real life. I feel like with Kyren, he's in one of these situations in the NFL that actually only uses one running back. And so his production is crazy because of the volume. He had 350 touches last season. 350. He had 1,481 yards from scrimmage, 81 yards per game on the ground, 16 touchdowns. But then, 4.1 yards per attempt. He fumbled the ball, I think, 5 or 6 times. He could not control the ball at times last season. And he was only 38th in yards after contact per attempt. 38th. So, yeah, like his volume stats, even first downs, he was 3rd, 10-plus yard rushes, he was 8th, which honestly isn't that impressive considering he had 350 touches. But that's the thing with Kyren is like, his pure volume production is undeniably top 5, top 10 in the NFL at least. But his talent, he's not that fast. He's not that explosive. He's really not even that good of a receiver where you would think that would kind of be his game, but he only had 34 catches last year, and he's really not utilized as like an option out of the backfield playmaker. There are some catches in the red zone he makes and some routes that he'll just, get to the inside, but I feel like he's not really used in that fashion either. Like, he's kind of used as like a power back. He's used as their bell cow ball carrier, and I feel like he's just going to wear down and wear out. He's not big enough. He's not fast enough. He's not explosive enough. And it felt like he was already wearing down last year. So I'm kind of concerned about how his game will grow and develop because he's already feeling like he's not as explosive as he was. So he's just a difficult one to talk about because it's on one hand, do you kind of rank him where his production is at, or do you rank him based on that talent and even the efficiency statistics when you kind of undercover it, where I feel like he's not as efficient as a lot of these other guys. If they were given the amount of touches that Kyren was given, they would probably have better stats than him. So at number 16, Kyren is just weird to talk about. But he's very important for the Rams. I mean, obviously, they give him the ball a ton. At number 15, Breece Hall of the New York Jets. Now, Breece is also really difficult to discuss, which is why this list is so difficult. Running back is usually typically tough because of the amount of injuries and because of the amount of turnover at the position. One year, a guy will fall off. One year, the guy will be brilliant. One year, the guy will be historic. And then the next year, he won't be anything, right? But with Breece Hall, he went from being one of the top 5 running backs in the NFL last year, in my opinion, to being just like not great and even lacking the same level of electricity and explosion, which is why I rank him so much lower this year. But at the same time, I can't truly give up on his potential, and I do feel like at his best, he can undeniably be a top 10 running back in the NFL. So he's really difficult for me to rank because on his high end, he's really excellent. He's elite. On his low end, he's not great. But at the same time, he's still like, if I were drafting running backs, he's still in that top 15 because he's a good receiver. He's explosive with his touches. And I feel like he's got really game-breaking speed, game-breaking juice. Last year, maybe that was what was missing to a certain degree. 266 touches last season, 1,359 total yards, but only 54.8 on the ground per game. 4.2 yards per attempt, not super efficient with his carries, but he still had 57 catches, still had 5.1 yards per touch, right? Still had above 5 yards per touch, which he's had in every season of his career. He was 14th in 10-plus yard carries, so the juice and the explosiveness was still there in the top half of the league, but was not there to the same amount as previously. His yards after contact per attempt was still 22nd, right? But his missed tackles force was only 27th. So I feel like he was good last year, but he just completely underwhelmed from his expectation standpoint. And you can't place him in that top 10 because he does not produce at that level. I don't think he's yet to have 1,000 yards rushing. So maybe this year with Justin Fields and probably the best offensive line of his career and an emphasis on running the ball, he could be a top 10 running back again. But I can't just give it to him because of his talent alone. Like, I need to see more production from him. So at number 15, Breece Hall, he's just a tough one to talk about again. At number 14, Alvin Kamara. Kamara is interesting because I kind of was done with him, in all honesty. Like, I felt like he was washed. I felt like he was finished. I felt like he was done being a really good ball carrier, really good running back in the NFL. But this past year, I felt like was a good combination of the volume that he's been seeing in recent years in combination with more efficiency that we saw in his youthful Saints days, okay? So he was easily on pace to have his best rushing season of his career, and I think he still ended up flirting with that by the end of the season. But he also continued to showcase that he's one of the best receiving backs in the NFL with 68 receptions. And this guy on a weekly basis was catching 3, 4, 5 passes a game. Like, it was a cheat code in PPR. He was getting 4 catches a game, 4, 5, 6 targets a game. And yeah, there are certain statistics that would tell you he's no longer elite. Like his yards after contact per attempt is only 40th in the NFL. His yards per attempt was only 4.2. But I think some of that is the offensive line was terrible. He lost Derek Carr for a good portion of the season. And let's be honest, he was the only show in town on his offense, especially once Chris Olave got injured. But there's other elements where like 67.9 rush yards per game is one of the better of his career. He still is a dynamic force as a receiver in terms of his smoothness, in terms of his vision in the screen game. And then even when you watch him in the ground game, his cuts, his ability to see a lane, cut back and make that run, it's just very effortless, and few can still play at that level of just chess that he plays at in terms of the running back position in his mind. Top 12 in first downs. So yeah, Kamara, I still think he's very good. I think what he lacks right now is he just lacks that explosiveness. He lacks that electricity, that pure breakaway speed, and he doesn't have the pure power to be able to overwhelm opponents or overwhelm defenses without that juice. So he's not quite as twitchy or quick that he was in his prime, but he still has all the value of being a 3-down running back that is one of the smartest and one of the wisest in the game. So at number 14, I have Alvin Kamara. At number 13, Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins, a player that I have infamously talked about not being a huge fan of, because I'm just generally not a huge fan of a running back that doesn't have much power in their game. And that is kind of a one-trick pony. But to be honest, what Achane does really well, he's extremely good at. And that's being one of the fastest, most explosive ball carriers in the NFL. And he also complemented that this past season with being a great receiver. So there's enough in terms of what he does really well for me to still rank him high. There are a lot of stats that would suggest that he does not belong this high. Missed tackles forced, only 31st. Yards after contact, only 27th, right? Even first downs and 10-plus yard runs, which is where you would think he would rank well, he's only 27th and 24th. So overall, production-wise, still not quite there, but had nearly 1,500 yards from scrimmage. Did see more touches this year, nearly 300, 281, right? 12 total touchdowns. But I think what's most impressive with him is when he is on, he's really hard to stop. When he is given a lane to work with, he is going to exploit it. And that's what I really like about him. I'm a big fan of those long breakaway plays. And Achane can create them as a receiver or as a rusher. He also showcased an impressive ability as a receiver, whether it be as a route runner, a downfield option, a mismatch, a screen player, or just a swing dump-off player. The way that Miami uses their motions, they would exploit Achane, getting them into space, just having them flare out of the backfield and using leverage against linebackers and much slower opponents to be able to create easy yards for him. And he's very good. He's like a guy you have to game plan against in terms of you have to lock that element of their offense down because it's so easy for them to get those effortless yards to one of the fastest players in the NFL because he just gets the ball behind the line of scrimmage and creates 7-8 yards per play because he's so quick at exploding and at accelerating that it's just easy yards. So defenses have to kind of take that away, and that informs my opinion on this player. So at number 13, Devon Achane, explosive, electric. I'd like to see a little bit more consistency. I'd like to see a little bit more power, a little bit more just pure grit in his game. But what he does extremely well, he does extremely well. At number 12, I have Joe Mixon of the Texans. Now, this is a good conversation after talking about Achane because Joe Mixon is the gritty guy. Joe Mixon is the throwback back, in my opinion, that remains in the NFL. But he really, I thought, revitalized himself. He was rejuvenated as a Houston Texan. I thought last year he had 8 100-yard games. 8 100-yard games. There were games that Joe Mixon simply put the offense of the Texans on his back, which a lot of people will overlook. I don't think people realize how valuable he was to their team. Their offensive line was terrible last year, and it included their run game, right? Their pass blocking was worse than their run blocking, but their run blocking still was not great, okay? And he had 72.6 rush yards per game, 1,300 yards from scrimmage, caught 36 passes. Yes, his efficiency in certain metrics, like yards after contact per attempt, was only 31st, and his yards per attempt overall was only 4.1. Certain metrics will not showcase Joe Mixon still being the same player. At the same time, though, he was 10th in 10-plus yard runs. He was 12th in first downs. He was 22nd in missed tackles forced. Joe Mixon, though, he always makes the necessary yards that you need in a big play in a big game. He was huge against the Chargers. He was awesome against the Chargers. He was pretty good against the Chiefs. Like, there were games where he was locked down, but it wasn't because of Joe Mixon. It was because the offensive line could not move anybody. They could not open up a lane. And I feel like Mixon has always been better than most running backs in the NFL at creating yards that are not there, because he has great feet. He has great slipperiness and great vision, most importantly, to make cutbacks, necessary cuts, jump cuts, to be able to see the yards that he can gain. And so Joe Mixon's not always been the prettiest, most explosive, most efficient runner, but he always maximizes what is there, which is so valuable to a team like Houston that has such a bad offensive line. So Mixon still had the juice last year. We'll see if he brings it once again in 2025 as one of the best running backs in football. At number 11, I think a guy that could easily be top 10 if he stays healthy, because he is awesome, and that is Kenneth Walker of the Seattle Seahawks. I've been a huge Kenneth Walker guy since coming out of the draft. You guys know how highly I was talking about him. I thought he should have been a first-round pick. And I think in the NFL, he's just been caught in a tough situation. Seattle has had one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL since he's entered the league, and he's been caught by some injuries as well. But last season, he was 9th in missed tackles forced, despite only having 199 touches and missing a good portion of the season. That speaks to how dangerous this guy is. And what I love about Walker is he's actually continued to get better as a receiver. He's been continually getting better catching the ball. That was something he didn't do in college, and he's become 46 catches last year. He's become a guy that Seattle can rely on in a screen game, in just a dump-off sense, in a check-down element. Like, Kenneth Walker can be that guy now. So he's taken that step in his game, but when you combine the juice, the speed, the breakaway ability with the ability to also make you miss, the ability to force a missed tackle with power, with balance, it's hard to find a guy with this skill set in the NFL. Quick cutting ability, jump cut ability, pure speed, and power. Kenneth Walker, he has it all. So I just need him to stay healthy, and he'd be a top 10 running back in the NFL in Seattle. I think he will be this year. At number 10, entering the top 10 running backs in the NFL today, I have Bucky Irving of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I would maybe even rank him higher based on purely last season, but Irving's only really had one season, an amazing rookie season. So it's hard to rank him much higher than this, given that there's been running backs that have been producing for years that are above him. But he was truly dynamic last year. He led the NFL in yards after contact per attempt with 3.93. Nearly 4 yards after contact per attempt is pretty wild. Okay. On top of that, he had a well-rounded game as a rookie, 66 rush yards per game and 47 total catches, 5.4 yards per attempt, 8 touchdowns, 1,500 yards from scrimmage, top 12 in first downs, top 12 in 10-plus yard rushes. I mean, he did it all. Like, Bucky Irving, what I like about him is he's a smart player for a young player. He is a quick player. Some of his highlights are some of the most fun to watch of 2024 the entire season. His cutbacks, his stop-start ability is second to none in the NFL. He is really up there. He's really elite in terms of stop, start, go, back, shift, right, left. Like, his ability to just make those movements in a phone booth is ridiculous. He doesn't have insane breakaway speed, but he seemingly always has enough to break away from the defense, and he is a sweet screen player. I don't know what it was about their screen game last year. Whenever Irving was in space, he just set up his blocks, and then you combine that with his quickness and his jitteriness, and it was just a problem for defenses across the NFL. So I don't think he's a guy that maybe will be able to maintain this level of workload of 254 touches per season. But I do believe that with Rachaad White by his side, he easily could continue to be one of the most efficient ball carriers in the NFL, along with being very well-rounded as well. So I'm really excited for Bucky in year 2. I'm really interested to see how he's affected by the loss of Liam Cohen, or if it truly is just this guy is a sweet player. But I think it's more so Bucky at number 10. Of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. At number 9, James Cook of the Buffalo Bills. James Cook was arguably the best football player in the AFC Championship. I thought he was that good. It's kind of a travesty that the Bills did not hand him the ball more in that game, but he had 18 total touchdowns last season, which I believe led the NFL at that position. He also, was in the backfield for the MVP of football, and James Cook, in my opinion, was the second best player, or second most dynamic player in that offense. He is a good, well-rounded back that is explosive and electric. I love James Cook because he's so smooth. A lot like his brother, he has an effortless rushing style with breakaway speed, really soft hands, and he's a good receiver. So he's good in all elements of the game. He doesn't necessarily need 20 touches, but he can take 20 touches in a game, whether as a runner or a receiver. He's got enough balance and power to be able to knock you over at the line of scrimmage or at the goal line to get a touchdown. And he's also got the speed. If he sees a lane, he's going to break away, and he is a problem. So yeah, and he's also been good in multitudes of different environments and weathers and games and game scripts. So James Cook just has like a very malleable style of game. So I really, really like him. Top 20 in pretty much every statistic, 63 rushing yards per game, 1,200 scrimmage yards this season. Only 32 catches kind of feels low for James Cook because it felt like he had a lot more, but 4.9 yards per attempt continues to be one of the most efficient ball carriers in the sport as well, and truly a dynamic element of the Bills offense. So James Cook is my number 9, maintaining in the top 10 and even having a better year than I felt like he did the previous season. I was calling him to be a top 10 running back last year, and he became that in 2024, and he'll be even better probably in 2025. At number 8, James Conner of the Arizona Cardinals. Probably the most underrated running back in the entire NFL. He ranked top 8 in first downs and 10-plus yard rushes and missed tackles forced. He had 5.3 yards per touch, which is extremely impressive. He had 3.3 yards per contact per attempt, yards after contact per attempt, which was 13th in the NFL. He had 4.6 yards per attempt, 1,500 scrimmage yards. He took on 283 touches and also caught 43 receptions. So James Conner, I just don't think gets credit for being the engine of the Cardinal offense over the last 2 years. He is the guy that they go to early in the game to establish and set the tone, whether it be as a runner or as a receiver. He's extremely balanced in terms of his ability to catch and run the ball. He's got very good all-around skill set. He's extremely powerful. He's got great balance. He's hard to tackle. He's got smooth and soft hands. He's got enough juice to make the difference in the open field. He's not the fastest breakaway runner, but he's definitely a problem once he gets into space because he's big. He's a big back. I just think James Conner plays with so much heart and soul, so much passion. I think he's truly undervalued, and I think he'll probably be undervalued entering 2025 as well. This guy just doesn't seem to stop and doesn't seem to give up, but he is, in my opinion, the engine of the Cardinals offense. You could say it's Trey McBride. You could say it's Kyler Murray. I don't think so. I think it's James Conner. This guy has been so good over the last 2 years, and he was even better in 2024. I expect him to be, once again, great in 2025. He's not the youngest, so you could maybe see a slight decline from him, and I am being a tad bit bold of ranking him over younger players like Cook, Irving, and Walker, but I just feel like Conner has been so good over the last 2 years that he deserves this ranking. So at number 8, I have James Conner. At number 7, Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts. I contemplated number 6. I do think he's a more explosive rusher than number 6, and he's arguably, the most explosive runner outside of Saquon in the entire NFL. If you give a guy a touch, he is going to take it the distance. Jonathan Taylor went crazy at the end of last season, actually having 100 yards per game on the season. 102 to be exact, rushing yards per game, seeing 321 touches. But he absolutely went nuts in the month of December. I think he had like 150 plus yards in every single game. It was ludicrous. Now, that being said, he's not the best route runner or receiver in the world. He only saw 18 receptions last year. But as a pure runner, he is a game-changing, game-breaking type of player. He's not always the most consistent, but I just think he is able to manage more explosives than like 99% of running backs in the NFL. And he just creates so much difference-making play to play, because you got to tackle him early in the down or else he's a problem. Like, he's got that power, size, balance, and speed combination that when you get him in the open field, it's just a problem. So he was 12th in yards after contact this season. He was also top 8 in first downs and 10 plus yard rushes. And obviously 102.2 yards per game is one of the 3 best in the NFL last year. So yeah, Jonathan Taylor, absolutely awesome runner of the football. Love the power and speed element of his game. And at times he's been the best running back in football. Ranking him at only 7 feels like a crime, but there are a lot of great running backs in the NFL right now entering 2025. At number 6, I have Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs was the engine of the Packers last year, a playoff team, and that's what undeniably places him at number 6 above Jonathan Taylor. He was a more important player for a better team, in my opinion, and more consistently early on. Josh Jacobs immediately took on a bell cow workload for the Packers. 337 touches in 2024. Josh Jacobs just simply does everything really well. He doesn't have breakaway speed like Jonathan Taylor, but I think he's got quicker feet and cuts. I think he also has more power and bulldozing capability, and I think he's a better receiver overall than Jonathan Taylor. He's not as efficient with his carries, though, at only 4.4 yards per attempt, but he had 16 touchdowns, 1,600 scrimmage yards. He was 3rd in yards after contact. He was 8th in yards after contact per attempt, despite having 337 touches. This guy's a problem to take down because he is an angry specimen. He is angry when he gets the ball in his hands. And he brings an actual tangible grit, toughness, and just physicality to the Packers that they did not have previously with Aaron Jones, which is why they made that decision. He had 5 yards per touch. He was 5th in first downs, 6th in 10 plus yard rushes. Josh Jacobs is an animal. That's simply the best way to describe him. At number 5, entering the top 5, the number 1 from last year, he simply did not play enough. That's Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey, any given season, could be the best running back in football. He has been a fantasy legend, a PPR wizard, and on top of that, a future Hall of Famer. He could have won the MVP in 2023. He was that good. He was by far the best running back in 2023. But he barely played last year. He only had 65 touches on the season. And he did have a couple 100-yard from scrimmage outings when he was healthy, but he just didn't play. I mean, even mentioning his stats honestly don't do him justice. But we know what Christian McCaffrey can be at his best. I still think he has that left in him. Actually, the game that he got injured and it ended his season against the Bills, I believe, he was on pace for like 200 yards in that game in the snow. Like, he was going off in that game. So now that he's healthy this offseason, McCaffrey's always been at his best when he's able to rejuvenate, recalibrate, and get healthy. And that's when he is just a guy that, down to down, there's not a guy that's more well-rounded in terms of pass blocking, pass catching, screen game, run game, vision, elusiveness, quickness. He has juice in the open field. He's not quite Derrick Henry, Saquon, Jonathan Taylor, but he's on that next group. And he is by far the best receiving back in football in terms of route running, mismatch capability, probably being a guy that could play wide receiver. Like, McCaffrey is as valuable as any running back in football because of how well-rounded he is. And I think how hard-working he is, how he sets the tone for the San Francisco 49ers, and how, since he's gotten there, he's become Kyle's go-to guy with a lot of other great players. So at number 5, Christian McCaffrey could easily get back in the top 3 next year. At number 4, Bijan Robinson. And I almost want to put Bijan higher because this could be the year of Bijan Robinson in 2025. He actually low-key ended up being, like, over the last 9 weeks of last season, the best producer at the running back position in terms of fantasy points over the last 9 games. So, like, he was having a great end to his season. I will say that Bijan, he's kind of like, I don't know what it is. Like, on one hand, he was a phenom of a prospect, but at the same time, it felt like he's not talked about. Like, nobody really discusses him. And maybe it's because his style isn't as sexy as Saquon or Henry or Gibbs, and he's not as well known as McCaffrey. But Bijan's that elite running back that I would put in the elite category that just isn't quite talked about in that manner. He's discussed or listed there, but he's not exactly like, everybody doesn't fanboy over him the way that they do others. But I think Bijan, his art is his cutting ability. I think in terms of cutting, he is the best running back in football when it comes to just quick cuts, like creating just 5-yard runs out of 2-yard runs. You know what I'm saying? Like, just that ability to just cut, jump cut, left, back, right, make a guy miss, like early in the down, get the ball, make the guy miss immediately behind the line of scrimmage, get the ball in open space as a receiver, cut back, create extra yards that nobody really sees on the tape, right? He's really good as a receiver too. Like, he's got really good hands. He had 61 catches last season for a reason. He's very efficient, 4.8 yards per attempt, 5.2 yards per touch. He was 5th in yards after contact. He was 4th in first downs. He had 85.6 rushing yards per game. Maybe Atlanta just wasn't recognized last year. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe they need more recognition, but Bijan could be the best running back in the league this year. Like, that wouldn't be surprising at all. He doesn't have the same breakaway ability as the guys in the top 3, but I think, like, in terms of overall down to down, getting the most yards that are there, he's capable of getting those dirty yards unlike any other running back in the NFL. So at number 4, I have Bijan Robinson. At number 3, Jahmyr Gibbs. Sonic is my number 3. Jahmyr Gibbs I contemplated at number 2 as well. The thing with Gibbs is he's kind of forced into being more of an efficient running back or more of a change of pace role because of the existence of David Montgomery. That being said, he still had 300 touches. So it's not like he had like 200, but he maximizes every touch truly. And I imagine what he could do with another 50 of those touches. That being said, he had 1,900 yards from scrimmage, 20 touchdowns last year, 5.6 yards per attempt, which is insane. He was fifth in missed tackles forced. He was 3rd in 10-plus yard rushes, and he had 52 catches. Jahmyr Gibbs is probably the best highlight reel running back in the NFL, at least right there with Saquon Barkley. His ability to make people miss in a silly fashion is absolutely out of this world. He's got incredible explosiveness, incredible juice, incredible explosiveness to be able to just like cut and go, or be able to just like, it's almost instant. His acceleration is funny. It's like honestly laughable, like watching him play, and he's smooth. He's just so much fun. I mean, and then he's a great receiver. He's got really good plant ability on his routes. Like, you'll see him run an angle route or like a Texas route, and he'll just be able to plant his foot, create separation on one cut. So Gibbs is really well-rounded. Gibbs is really electric. And I think he could be the best running back in football in any given season, just like Bijan Robinson. They're different styles. Gibbs is more of that, doesn't need as many touches, but probably can't wear down a defense or down to down be as like dirty yard as Bijan Robinson, but he's more of the home run guy. So both are incredible. At number 3, I have Jahmyr Gibbs. At number 2, Derrick Henry. The king is undeniable. I can't deny the king. He's at number 2. And in fact, in many statistics, he was number 1. First in first downs, first in missed tackles forced, first in yards after contact, okay? He also had 113 rushing yards per game, which is insane. He had 1,900 rushing yards this year, 2,114 yards from scrimmage, and nearly 6 yards per attempt. He only had 19 catches, which is, again, what hurts Derrick Henry is he's really not a receiver, okay? He's really an old school running back, but he is an alien. Okay, he is a true monster among men. This is a massive human that is still one of the fastest, explosive ball carriers we've ever seen in football. There's just not a lot of big backs in the history of the NFL that can break away and score a touchdown from 60 yards out the way that Derrick Henry can. Once he gets in the open field, everybody fears him. He's one of the most feared running backs in football, and he has this like effect on an offense where he makes the passing game better because he exists in the backfield, because safeties and linebackers know that they have to tackle the guy. So that makes explosives happen for the offense effortlessly just by Derrick Henry lining up in your backfield. On top of that, in any given play, he can score a touchdown. Any given play. And then also he wears down a defense at the same time. There could be like 20 attempts that he has in a game where he's not averaging more than 3.5 yards per carry. But eventually he'll have a 40, 50-yard run that seals the deal. And then at the end of the day, it's like above 4 yards per carry. So Derrick Henry is like not always the most efficient sometimes, but I feel like when you add him to Lamar Jackson, it took his efficiency through the roof because of the fear of Lamar Jackson. And then on top of that, he just wears down a defense. He's a powerhouse, but he's a powerhouse that can hit you with a home run, which is so rare. So he's obviously a Hall of Famer. He's obviously a guy that just like could be the best. Like you could rank him number one, honestly, even with as good as the number one guy is. You could still rank Derrick Henry number one, as I said. Like, it was the quietest 1,900-yard rushing season I think I've ever seen in my life. At number one, Saquon Barkley. Okay, I think the unquestioned number one, as much as I love the king is Saquon Barkley right now with 2,283 yards from scrimmage, which does not include the playoffs. Okay, arguably having from front to back the best regular season, postseason run that any running back has ever had, at least since probably like Jim Brown's prime, okay? He led the NFL in 10-plus yard rushes. He was second in yards after contact, and he led the NFL in rushing yards per game with 125 rushing yards per game. He saw 378 touches, which is insane, 15 touchdowns, 5.8 yards per attempt on 378 touches, and 33 receptions. So, yeah, Saquon Barkley, he had touchdowns. Like, he had more 50-yard touchdowns in one season than running backs have in their entire career. Like, he scored more touchdowns outside of 20 yards than he did inside 20 yards, guys. That's a real statistic. He had more touchdowns that were 20-plus yards out from the end zone than he did inside the red zone. That, like, Saquon was backwards hurdling people. It got so ridiculous last year with his ability. And the crazy thing is that as good as he is as a runner, we didn't barely even see what he could do as a receiver because it's not a huge element of the Eagles' game. They just simply asked Barkley to carry the team offensively. And this is where, like, I'm kind of bothered by the Jalen Hurts stands, is like, this is your guy, Saquon. He's your MVP on offense. The offensive line is the engine that runs things, but Saquon is the guy that took them to the promised land. Saquon is the guy that said, get on my back. You're riding me to the Super Bowl. It's not Jalen Hurts, right? So Saquon is the guy that made the Eagles simply unstoppable because he is one of the most explosive home run running backs in NFL history. And I'm glad that he escaped New York because now he's back on the trajectory where he always belonged to be a Hall of Fame running back because he does have that talent, that skill, that quickness, that elusiveness, that home run speed. And it's incredible that he still has that despite the injuries that he's had. So at number one, Saquon Barkley is the best running back in the world. There it is, guys. My top 32 running backs in the NFL today. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, spike the like button. Don't forget, for more rankings, like the video and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one. Wide receivers coming soon. Peace.